Hi everybody, my name is Melissa and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the top 20 books that I read in 2019. I had a very difficult time narrowing it down to 20 books, and yeah, I read 210 at least by today that I'm filming this books, and yeah, it was very difficult to choose which books I wanted to talk about. I have a mix of romance and fantasy on this list, and these books are in absolutely no particular order because there's no way I'd be able to rank these in any sort of way. So let's go ahead and get started. The first book that I have to talk about, if you've watched any of my other, best books or top books or recommended books of any capacity, definitely this is going to be on those, and it's The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in the Stormlight Archives. I have read the first two books, and I definitely think that this one is the strongest of the two that I read. I absolutely love Brandon Sanderson. His worlds that he creates are so amazing. The magic systems are hard magic systems, so there are plenty of rules laid out for you. This is a very big book, but honestly, once I got into it, I just didn't even notice the page count, and I was flying through it and was very sad that it was finally over. But yeah, I really love this book. This is a high epic fantasy story following several different main characters and their points of view. It's based in this place like the Shattered Plains, and they're fighting a war. And you see different characters. One is a thief, one is a general, one is a prince, different characters throughout the time. One is a slave as well. And you see their journeys, and it's just so amazing, so well thought out. Every single character that I read from their point of view, I was never bored, and I can't even tell you if I have a favorite point of view because I love them all. So if you are looking for a new high fantasy to read and aren't afraid of the page count, definitely pick this up. It is so well worth it, and the fourth book is coming out next year, and I'm so excited, and I think this is going to be a 10-book series, and yeah, absolutely can't wait. So the second book that I'm going to talk about is The Unrequited by Saffron A. Kent. This is a forbidden dark romance, definitely age gap as well. It's about a main character who has she stalks the guys that she likes, and she ended up getting kicked out of her parents' house and getting, pushed into this whole nother state where her parents didn't have to deal with her. And yeah, this one was so good. So you start off with the main character, and she's really down. She still thinks she's in love with this one boy, and she sees a new guy, and she kind of gets this obsession with him, starts stalking him. Turns out he is a professor. He's a married professor, and they start up this relationship. There is cheating that is involved in this story, but I think the author handled it very well, and I really did love this book so much. This third book is a YA fantasy that I absolutely adored, and that is Sorcery of Thorns by Margaret Rogerson. I picked this one up after reading An Enchantment of Ravens last year, and I really wasn't sure if I was going to read this, but after hearing such high praise of this book, I definitely picked it up and loved it so much. This author did such a good job of creating a standalone universe where I totally felt that nothing was rushed, everything just had great pacing, everything was fleshed out in the exact amount that I wanted it to be, and the story of a girl that wants to be a warden. They are these librarians that kind of protect the world from evil books, because certain books that were created by evil sorcerers have the ability to, become these monsters. And at the beginning of this book, a monster is unleashed, and she is kind of blamed for that. So she has to figure out a way to, save the world basically from these evil book monsters. So the idea of librarians and talking and interacting books, magical books, was so much fun to read about, and I loved the storyline and the characters in this. I do want more from this story just because I loved it that much. I have another YA fantasy on this list, and that is A Curse So Dark and Lonely by Bridget Kimmerer. This is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and I absolutely loved it. It has great representation of cerebral palsy, and if you've read this book or haven't read this book, definitely do. I think this main character is one of the strongest female characters that I've read this year. I even did a whole video on strong female characters. But yeah, I absolutely love this book so much. And basically this girl, she's living her everyday life, and something happens where she tries to save this one girl and ends up being taken to this fantasy world in place of the other girl. So she ends up having to live there for a certain amount of time, and Ren, the prince of the story, has to get her to fall in love with him to break this curse, and I just absolutely love this so much. I just remember diving into this, reading it in a couple days, and I did not want to leave this world. The second book is coming out next year, and I can't wait. So the next book I want to talk about is a sci-fi YA novel, and that's Skyward by Brandon Sanderson. Of course, I have another Brandon Sanderson novel on this list. I absolutely adored this book. This is about a girl named Spencer who wants to become a pilot. She is basically kind of ostracized from her community because her father was a pilot and he abandoned his fleet in the middle of something and things went south. So she's branded the daughter of a coward, and in this world people are, you know, pride is a very big thing and honor is a very big thing. So the fact that her father did this, you know, she's trying to prove that she isn't like this and she can be a pilot just like him. So I absolutely adored this. This has, you know, one of my favorite characters in it as well, and just so good. So you see her in flight school, and the action and thought and everything that went into this book and creating these scenes was absolutely amazing. Brandon Sanderson actually went out and talked to, you know, Air Force pilots and things like that to make sure it was accurate. And yeah, if you love sci-fi YA books, definitely check this one out. I freaking loved it, and just some of my favorite characters, and I definitely want to read the second one very soon. So to bring it back into the romance genre, I definitely had to choose The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. This was such a fun book. It's about a girl named Olive and her twin sister got married, and that day of the wedding something happened to the food, and literally everybody but Olive and Ethan, who is the groom's brother, gets sick. Olive and Ethan are not big fans of each other, so the bride doesn't want the, you know, tickets to the honeymoon to go to waste, so Olive and Ethan have to pretend to be married. This has so many fun tropes and such a great rom-com. It's a hate to love as well, because obviously they just can't stand each other and they have to be married so that way, you know, they can take this honeymoon and experience Maui, you know, during the cold wintry times where they live. So I absolutely adored this book so much. I'm sure this is on a lot of people's favorites as well, and if you haven't read a Christina Lauren book, this one is one of my favorite. I definitely suggest starting here. The Bound Spirit series is one that I just found this year and absolutely devoured the first 3 books. This is a reverse harem paranormal romance. I freaking loved it. It's definitely a very niche genre. Reverse harem is one girl, multiple guys, and it's very hard to find, you know, really good books in the genre, and I'm so happy I found this one. It's about a girl who, you know, she moves to this new town. She doesn't really know that she has these powers, or the powers that she has, she doesn't know what she is. So she finds these group of guys, and they're all different, and she doesn't realize that they are different species as well, like werewolves, witches, all that kind of stuff. And it is so good. I love this book or book series so much. It definitely is very reminiscent of the Veil Diaries, which is another one I absolutely adored. And yeah, I definitely can't wait till I can get my hands on the next book in the series, because once I find a reverse harem gem, I love it. One book that I can't believe it took me this long to finally pick up was Carry On by Rainbow Rowell. This is a male YA fantasy book. I'm not even sure, but it's basically like fan fiction of Harry Potter that was actually the fan fiction in Fangirl, and yeah, so a lot of different like little things go into this book, but I absolutely loved it. This definitely was very popular a couple years ago, and I didn't pick it up because there was so much hype surrounding it, but I loved it so much. Simon is supposed to be the chosen one, but he's not very good at being the chosen one, and his roommate Baz is there to try and, you know, take him down, in other words, kill him, so he can't, you know, save the world. So this is their story, and Simon is just so fun to kind of see his, you know, love-hate relationship with Baz, and just, oh my gosh, I loved this book so much. It was so whimsical and magical and just really felt so comforting to read. The magic system is cute and a lot of fun. It takes these phrases and songs and poems that, you know, you hear in everyday life, and it turns it into the actual magic, because when more people are saying these phrases, songs, things like that, it gives those words power. So a lot of fun, very whimsical like I said, and I definitely want to read Wayward Son. The Wall of Winnipeg and Me is a slow burn romance, new adult romance by Mariana Zapata. This is one, again, that had a ton of hype surrounding it and took me a very long time to finally read, but I'm so glad I did. It's about a girl who is an assistant to the Wall of Winnipeg, who is this big NFL player. He is from Canada, and she ends up saying, bye, I'm gonna leave. You treated me like crap and I'm gonna go do my own digital marketing thing, which I thought was so awesome. So she ends up starting her own, or, you know, making her own side business full time. Something happens and, you know, I think his name is Adrian. I forgot his name. But something happens to his visa or green card and he needs to get married in order to be able to stay there and play football because he doesn't want to go back to Winnipeg. So this was so cute seeing, you know, this hate to love kind of, but, you know, marriage of convenience type deal. And he promised her that he would pay off her loans and buy her a house at the end of their marriage, which is like supposed to last 3 years. So it was so cute seeing them together, and it was so slow burn and so amazing. And when they finally get together, you're just like, yes, thank you, because they're so cute. And yeah, definitely love this one a lot. So one of my absolute favorite books of this year has to be Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is a book that the characters on the pages seem so real. Taylor Jenkins Reid knows how to write characters, knows how to make them completely flawed, yet you are still rooting for them and want them, you know, to have the best in life. This is a story about Daisy Jones and her joining up with a group of musicians called the Six, and kind of their story rise to fame, because this reads like a documentary style. It's not like a, you know, narrative, things like that. So this was so interesting to read, and it's really like you're reading a documentary if it was like written out, and these people seem real. It seems like they're telling this true story and you really think that Daisy Jones is real and you want to hear the songs that she's going to be playing. But yeah, basically I love this story so much. I even did my only review, like specific book review on this book right here, because I loved it so much. This is a book that I definitely want to reread and, you know, go back into this world. And I was rooting for the two characters to get together, even though, you know, you shouldn't, because he's married and, you know, she has her own like crazy life that's going on. And you know, if they get together, it would be so, so bad. But I loved this book so much. And if you haven't read this book, this is a book that I tell anybody who asks, what book should I read? I tell them this one because I loved it so much. So this next book that I'm going to talk about is one that I picked up in the summer months, and I wish I had picked it up during the winter or the fall because it was just so atmospheric, and that is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. This is a book that I really enjoyed. It took me a while to get through it because it is so detailed. This is about a character who wakes up in a body of a new person every single day, and he has to find out who murdered Evelyn Hardcastle, and he is competing against other people, and you see every single day he's in a new body, and like sometimes it would get a little, you know, repetitive, but at the same time it wasn't, because, you know, you see how his actions from before are reflecting, you know, now, and you see, you know, his future self later on, but he's also competing against other players who are trying to find out who killed Evelyn Hardcastle, because, you know, they're trying to get out of whatever this place is. And it is so interesting, and it's so dark, and you really feel like you're there. You feel like you're in this like English countryside, and, you know, where it's misty and just dreary, and I don't know, I just can't even explain it. It was so well done and so well thought out, but there was just so many, you know, players in this book that it felt like an Agatha Christie / like sci-fi novel, and I really loved it. And if you are looking for something that's going to really, you know, transport you into this like mystery novel, definitely pick this one up. I really loved it. Cruel Black Hearts is another reverse harem book or series that I really enjoyed. I love the first two books. The third one I just felt kind of was a little bit disappointing in the fact that it felt like it wrapped up a little bit too neatly. But this is a book about a girl who is obsessed with serial killers. She works as a journalist part-time and has a blog as well, where she kind of talks about serial killers, and that's really the only thing she writes about. So obviously, since she's online and talking about these things, it attracts serial killers, and there are different guys that you know she attracts. They're not good. This book definitely kind of goes there, pushes some boundaries, and deals with dark subject matters, and you see it and you live it through these characters. I loved it so much, honestly. I really did. So if you like dark romances, if you like reverse harem, definitely check this one out. because I loved it. Also, there's another series that she is currently writing as well that deals with the same world. And yeah, I'm like on book 5 and book 6 is coming out on the 1st of January, so very excited. Welcome to the Dark Side by Gianna Darling, of course, made this list. I absolutely love Zeus and his story. This is about a girl who was 7 years old, and Zeus, the president of this MC, ends up saving her life, and they kind of strike up this friendship because he ends up going to jail, and she finds out that she has cancer. So she starts writing to him, and they build up this friendship, and he kind of like helps her grow up because her family is kind of like, they're crap. They don't care that she has cancer. They just kind of like use her as this like symbol, because I think her, if I'm not mistaken, her dad is in like politics or something. I can't really remember, but she ends up, you know, wanting more out of this relationship, and she is obviously too young, so he kind of like ex-nays that. And later on, once she's old enough and he's out of jail, they strike up this relationship. So it starts off as letters and moves into, you know, a normal, you know, book type format, and I loved this. So I am actually planning on reading the 3rd book in this series, which follows his daughter, and yeah, I love it. It's a great age gap romance, motorcycle club romance, and yeah, overall just really great. Read it. I loved it. So of course, since I put the 1st book on my list last year, I had to put the 2nd book on this one, and that's The Blinding Knife by Brent Weeks. This is a story that has such great characters, ones that are completely flawed, ones that you love to hate or hate to love, and it's just so amazing. Some of the things that are brought up about this series, I can totally understand why some people don't like it, but I never noticed it until like I watched those reviews, and I was like, oh yeah, that does happen. But obviously I didn't see it or notice it when I was reading it, but this is such an amazing book series. So it's multi-point of view, and the magic system is definitely what sold me on reading this because it's based on a color system. Certain people can, you know, cast different magic, and that's based on different colors, and if the more colors that you can control, the more powerful you are. So the prism can control all of the colors, and there's only one prism at a time, and this one is just so good. This has like a magic school that one of the characters attends, and you kind of go and, you know, follow different characters throughout these books, and I freaking love it so much. I read this one quite quickly, and I do want to read the 3rd one very soon, and this series actually is complete. He just released the 5th book, so yeah, I need to get on it and finish this, but yeah, freaking love this one. So I have a dark new adult romance, and that's the 3rd book in the Devil's Night series, and that's Killswitch by Penelope Douglas. This is my favorite out of the series that she has so far. It's definitely the darkest. I definitely love Winter, the main girl character, the most. She's just so strong in all the things that she goes through and, you know, overcomes. I just loved seeing that in this book. So this is about Damon. In the first 2 books, you absolutely hate him. He is like the worst of the worst, and somehow Penelope Douglas changes your mind and you are rooting for Damon to get with Winter, and it's just, oh my gosh, so good. Again, you definitely want to read the first 2 before you start this one, and once you get here, you will not be disappointed. I know a lot of people, this is their favorite as well, and if you want an introduction to dark romance, this is a great series to start off with. Corrupt is the first one. Check it out if you haven't already. Anything Penelope Douglas writes, I'm reading, and I definitely can't wait to pick up the novella that happens in between this one and the one before it, but yeah, absolutely love it so much. So this next book I have is a thriller. It's the first thriller I read this year on audiobook, and I absolutely love the audiobook, and that's The Silent Patient. This is about a girl named Alicia or a woman named Alicia, and she ended up murdering her husband. She shot him, and no one knows why. They seem to have had the perfect marriage, and you know, everybody's just so confused. So once this happened, she stopped talking altogether, and this psychologist, he makes it his mission to find out, you know, what happened, is she okay, wants to help her, and you see it from his point of view the majority of the time, and there's in between certain chapters, you see her journal. I don't really read thrillers, so reading this book, I had no idea what was going to happen, and it totally shocked me at the end, and I absolutely love this book so much. I see why it won the Goodreads Choice Awards. I definitely voted for this one, and yeah, I loved it. So Holly Black ended up finishing her Heir of the Folk trilogy, trilogy, and out of the 2 that were released, I definitely had to go with The Wicked King. This one was my favorite out of the whole entire trilogy. This definitely did not suffer from middle book syndrome. I found this one to be the most fast-paced. It had a lot going for it, a lot of action, so much political intrigue, and just the characters so amazing. These books are very short, but never did I feel like, you know, this book was lacking in any way. I loved the 3rd book as well, and I really thought it ended on such a great note. Everything did tie up very nicely. So this is about a girl named Jude who is human, and she ends up growing up in the Fae realm because the person or Fae that murdered her family ends up taking her twin and her half-sibling sister back to the Fae realm, and where, you know, humans are kind of like definitely looked down upon by the Fae. But what I love about this series is the Fae can't lie, so you definitely see a lot of like wordplay and how she has to kind of like grow up with these like beings that are just not nice, and definitely you think of Fae or fairies as like, oh, you know, Tinkerbell and things like that, but no, they aren't like that, and it's dark and it's amazing, and I love this series so much. I definitely want to reread it very, very soon. Enemies by Tajan is one that I absolutely loved. This is a sports romance and one that totally had me in tears. I put this one on my fall favorites list as well and really did enjoy this one. I read it as an arc, but that no way, you know, changed my opinion of this. I definitely loved it. It was very reminiscent of her other book, Ryan's Bed. I definitely like her more hard-hitting books. So this is about a girl who ends up moving away from her family. She goes down to Texas, where the only person she knows is an old friend of hers named Stone, and she doesn't want to talk to him anymore. They stop being friends after a while. He does live there. He's now in the NFL. He's this big, you know, football star, and she's just going there to go to school. So something happens, and the only person that can reach her is Stone, because he still has connections from their hometown. He ends up finding her and telling her, you know, what happened, and it is so heartbreaking, and I love seeing how Stone really helps her get through these times, and it's just, I really did love this book so much. So if you're looking for a good sports romance, one that has a lot of heart and a lot of depth that will leave you in tears, definitely check this one out. It was very good. So a book that I read and loved for the first time this year was The Simple Wild by K.A. Tucker. This is a book that is definitely a slow burn, hate to live romance, but there's more to it than that. It deals with topics of family illness as well as reconnecting with your family and finding a community. This is about a girl who lives in Toronto. She kind of has her own thing going for her. She, you know, is this blogger, fashion blogger, and she finds out that her father has cancer. So definitely very hard-hitting topics. So she goes to Alaska to reconnect with her father, who she hasn't seen since she was 2 years old. So this starts a relationship with Jonah, and, you know, good and bad, but I loved this book. It was so heartwarming, definitely had me in tears by the end of it, and I know that she's writing a second novel as well that is a sequel to this, and I'm very excited to be back in this world with these characters because I loved it. So the very last book that I want to talk about is Serpent Dove by Shelby Mahurin. This is a book that it was very hyped, but I definitely, you know, participated in that hype. It's about a girl who's a witch, and she ends up having to marry a witch hunter. So where she ends up living is like where the witch hunters are, and she obviously, it's a very dangerous place to be for her, and something happens where she ends up having to marry a witch hunter. So it's about this like hate to love arranged marriage with a witch hunter. There are 2 different types of witches. There's like ones that deal with blood magic and another sector that doesn't. One thing that I do wish that came out of this book was a little bit more detail on the magic systems and, you know, what kind of went into this, but there was a lot of action towards the last like 1/4 of the book, and if you are looking for a really good witch novel, definitely pick this one up. I loved it. I loved the, you know, interactions between the main character and her husband, and it was just so much fun to see them kind of like grow and learn to trust each other. So yeah, definitely one of my top books. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for watching the best books of 2019. It was so hard for me to narrow down the books that I wanted to talk about, and yeah, like I said, none of these are in any type of order because, you know, I love them all. If you have read any of those books or have any thoughts or opinions, I would love to chat about it and talk about it in the comments down below, and I hope you have a great day and happy reading. Bye!